Oh, are we rivers coursing every valley? Oh, are we waves upon the shores of time? Oh, are we stardust gathered through the ages? Are we not dreams of the one eternal mind? Oh, are we trees rising to the heavens? Oh, are we flowers unfettered by the thorn? Oh, are we pillars of a great eternal temple? Are we not one? Oh Lord, are we not yours? Have we not joy in the midst of every shadow? Have we not hope in the deepest of the dark? Have we not peace that passes understanding? Oh, are we sons fashioned in your image? Oh, are we not daughters carrying your name? Oh, are we brothers across the generations? Are we not sparks from an everlasting flame? Have we not joy in the midst of every shadow? Have we not hope in the deepest of the dark? Have we not peace that passes understanding? Oh, are we light summoned by the light? Oh, are we gleaming and dancing on the shore? Lord, can we hold each other through the crossing? Are we not one? Oh Lord, are we not yours? Are we not one? Oh Lord, are we not yours?
Well, good morning. We want to welcome you to the Grove and say thanks for joining us this morning. That's our lovely Liz. She's going to play some more songs here in just a moment for us to worship together. I do want to say hello. I'm Jody. We have a few announcements to make today. Our students have started since last week. They are meeting during our service time in the back. So if you have a middle school through high school age student, they are doing their small group time during our service time. So they are welcome to join them if there's any. I think that most of them have headed upstairs, but just as a reference, and so you know that if you have students 6th to 12th grade, they are having their program on Sunday mornings in the back upstairs. And a couple announcements we have coming up this week. We have our pub theology is every Thursday night at 7 o'clock, so Thursdays at 7 p.m., and we meet over at the Yard, which is between Anthony's and CJ's. We meet up at the picnic tables for some time of discussion, and it's a really neat time. Every week we kind of have a different topic that we talk about with our faith, and it's open to all people who will want to come and have maybe grab a drink and have discussion with us. So that's this Thursday at 7 o'clock at the Yard. Next Sunday, so a week from today, we're going to be having a suicide prevention awareness gathering, and it's also going to be hosted there right after the service over at the Yard. And we have some live music that will be there from 2 to 5. It's a time and an opportunity for our people to gather not only for support, but also maybe to gather some resources to support one another in that shared experience. And so if you we'd love for you to join us. Our friend Tiffany, or our lovely Tiffany, she's helping head that up. And so we really appreciate her taking that initiative. It's an important topic. We talked a lot about that last week, just mental illness and drawing some attention to that and not being afraid to talk about it with one another. So we're having that event next Sunday, and everybody's invited to come to show your support and also to maybe gather some resources and be together in community. So that's next Sunday. So we're going to get ready to move into a time of worship together. But before we do that, I'd love for you guys to take a chance to maybe stand, move around a second, say hello, maybe introduce yourselves to someone that you haven't met just quite yet, and we'll come back together in just a moment for our time to worship. 1, 2, 3, go. Yes. Next week. Next week. Yep. So I hope you had a chance to say hello to someone, maybe someone new, maybe someone that you haven't seen in a bit. We're going to come back together, and I'm going to read a prayer for us as we move into a time of worship. And if it's available to you and you want to join us in standing, we're going to have a time that we sing along with Liz. The lyrics will be up on the screen, as well as this prayer that I'm about to read. The words are also going to be on the screen. So I would invite you to stand with me. So you'll see the words posted up, and this is called your welcome invitation. So if you'd like to follow along and make this a prayer of your heart as well. How hard we make things, O God. How heavy the yoke we place on ourselves through our insecurity and pride, through our fear and unbelief, through our denial and stagnation. How threatening our world becomes when we make life and joy depend on our own ability. But you have invited us to a different life, a deeper joy. You have offered us a lighter yoke if we will just stop for a moment and follow you. Thank you for your gently urgent whisper, your softly persistent touch, calling us to come, to rest, and to lay down our self-imposed burdens. With relief and hope, we respond to your invitation, gladly taking up your yoke, joyfully lifting your burden, and freely giving ourselves to you in love, in praise, and in service. Amen. Join us as we worship.
You give life, you are love, you bring light to the dark. are you, Lord. I wanna know you, Lord, like I know a friend. I wanna know you, Lord. I wanna know you, Lord, like I know a friend. I wanna know you, Lord. So I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. I wanna know you, Lord. I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. I wanna know you, Lord. I used to think that I could box you in, but I'm laying down. I wanna know you, Lord. I used to think that I could box you in, but I'm laying down. I wanna know you, Lord. So I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. I wanna know you, Lord. I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. I wanna know you, Lord. Lord, I've been told to be ashamed. Lord, I've been told I don't measure up. Lord, I've been told I'm not good enough. But you're here with me. I reach out and you find me in the dust. And you say no amount of untruths can separate us. I reach out and you find me in the dust. And you say no amount of untruths can separate us. I will rejoice in the simple gospel. I will rejoice in you, Lord. I will You say no amount of untruths can separate us. You bled your heart out, now I feel love beat in my chest. Wonderful. You gave your beauty in exchange for my ugliness. Wonderful. You left your perfection and embraced our rejection. How marvelous, how boundless is your love, is your love. Oh, how wonderful, sacrificial is your love for me. Put on our chains, send us out through the open door. Wonderful. You took our sadness, crowned us with joy and real peace. Wonderful. You left your perfection, fought for our redemption. How marvelous, how boundless is your love, is your love. How wonderful, sacrificial is your love for me. Marvelous, how boundless is your love, is your love. Oh, how wonderful, sacrificial is your love for me. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. How wonderful, yes, Jesus loves me. This is love. You gave yourself. Amen. Y'all can be seated.
So this is where I am with it. I can't pastor a church that's not affirming. I believe that God does bless and honor same-sex relationships.
Once you know and you believe and you see things in a different light, it's really hard to unsee it.
Bryson City is traditional Southern.
We'll probably get some outside rocks thrown.
But affirming for us would be we could hire as staff, even pastors, LGBTQ plus.
I had to hide. I thought if I drove really fast and hit that ridge, all of this would be over.
Not acknowledging the existence of a person is as damaging as demonizing their existence.
What if churches began to just let gay people be who they are? I know what to do with people's hatred. I still struggle to know what to do with people's half-ass love.
Has our tradition done very well with this? I would say no.
And when they say, oh, you're going against the Bible, well, guess what? My grandfather used Bible verses to justify segregation.
It's embarrassing. What I say when people say it's clear is, our history doesn't indicate that. Our history tells a story where we need to be more concerned about humility than we do certainty.
My mom would always say, I won't be mad at you so long as you tell the truth. But we ask them in these faith communities, it's better if you lie.
When you're shunned by your own family, where do you go?
It's us who are now joining them.
It makes me so happy that this church is doing what it's doing.
And so now every church that takes a step helps us get on the right side of justice.
I have found the church that I've been looking for 40 years.
I wish everybody could feel that. I got goosebumps just thinking about it because it's great.
Keep your eye on suffering and let it go for their sake.
We'll see where it goes.
Hope I don't lose my job at the high school, but I won't just be an ally, I'll be an accomplice.
Well, good morning once again. One of the things I want to say now so I don't forget, next Sunday at the Suicide Prevention Awareness Gathering, there's going to be a table set up where you could bring photos of those lost, loved ones lost to suicide. You can bring that in, be able to share that way if you'd like to bring a photo or something that reminds you of them. I'm going to read a poem to you, and then we're going to jump right into our conversation this morning. Some of you got the email or saw the Facebook post today or this week about our message today is about having hard conversations. And so let me read this poem I found. It's by Emily Dickinson, and it'll be on the screen behind me. It says, "Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in circuit lies. Too bright for our infirm delight. The truth superb surprise. As lightning to the children eased with explanation kind, the truth must dazzle gradually, or every man be blind." So we are just about 2 weeks now from our premiere of our full-length documentary that you just saw the trailer to that. I'm really excited about this. I got to watch the latest uncut version of this, updated cut of this, and it's going to be great. I think you're going to love it. It's really well done. The audio, the video, everything is superb, and excited for you to come hear our story, to invite others to hear our story, and be a part of this journey with us. My guess, though, is that most of us, if not all of us, are going to be having some hard conversations or face some questions from friends and family between now and October 1st. Some of you have already been facing those, and you'll continue to face those for weeks and months, maybe to follow. You've had these conversations, or people have come to you because they're concerned with you because you attend the Grove, and they want to know if you're okay and what's going on at the church is okay. Over the last 15 years that I've been here, and I've been here longer than that, but 15 years as being senior pastor, we've had issues arise in the church where we've had to have some hard conversations, right? We've had people get mad and leave. We've had people get hurt and leave, and those are two different things. We've probably have some people here right now that are mad at me, right? You know, you don't have to raise your hand, but you may there be. Or at some point, some of you here will get mad at me. It's something I'll say, something I'll do, and it'll rub you the wrong way. We've had people who have been mad and have stayed, and either they've gotten over it or you're just still mad, kind of a thing. But today's message is going to look less like a message and more like a classroom teaching, if that's okay. I'm going to really lean heavy into this book called Talking Across the Divide by Justin Lee. He wrote two great books. One is Torn. It was his first book, and his second book was Talk Across the Divide. This idea of having conversations with people you disagree with but want to remain friends with. And so I'm going to use this. I taught this in a classroom setting twice now to a group from Canada. Every year a group from Canada comes down here, and they're a leadership team. And the last 2 years with COVID, they had a hard time coming down, and so we did some online Zoom calls, and they asked, hey, what's something you're passionate about right now, and can you share it with us? And I was reading that book, and we went through it together as a small group here at the church. Several of you were a part of that group, and so I'm going to share from that. Share some stuff that I think will change the way you have conversations moving forward. So this is like some good stuff. I don't know how often I have good stuff, but if today was a day where you wanted to take some notes or on your phone type some notes, I'll pretend you're not on Facebook. But if you want to write some things down, because I really feel like this is some good stuff to help you if you're interested in having hard conversations with people, but you still want to be in relationship with those people. We all have those moments where things come up, issues, subjects, topics come up. And whether it's with friends or family or coworkers or even your spouse, topics come up in conversation that are important to us. And we don't always agree with one another. But before we get into it, I have some questions I want to ask you because I want these questions to be on your mind throughout this message and maybe as you stew and process this later. And you can write these questions down or just remember them. They're going to be on the screen behind me, but maybe start thinking of your answer and just have that there in the front of your mind. But some questions I want that we might look back at. First is, what are some issues that are dividing or have divided the church? Like, what are some issues that just, in churches are dividing it? And this is deeper than like the color of the carpet or the style of chairs that we sit on. Like, what are some things? Heaven, hell, biblical interpretation, marriage equality, pro-life, pro-choice, gender roles, alcohol, masks versus no mask. What are some things that come to your mind that divide the church? What are some issues that divide you in your family or your friends or culture? What are some issues that that you bring it up, there's division there, there's polarization in there. Gun control, women's rights over their bodies, public schools versus homeschooling, war, immigration, marriage equality, climate control, fair elections, news sources. What are some issues that divide? Where did you get your belief system from? Like what informed you or what formed your belief system? Was it your family or your friends or your church? Was it your school growing up, your politics? Was it social media? Is that what forms your belief system, what you believe on certain things? How about, have any of your beliefs on big issues changed? From childhood to now, can you look back at some of the dividing issues in your life or in culture, and you can look at it and go, well, once upon a time, this is what I felt, but later on, I've moved on to this, and now I feel different. It's changed. I don't know if this one will be on the screen because I couldn't find it earlier, but what are a couple words that you would use to describe your worldview? So your philosophy of life, how you see things. What are some words that you would use? A couple that came to my mind were like words like conservative, progressive, Christian, liberal, biblical, patriarch, universal, monotheistic, nationalistic. Like, what are some things that would describe how you see things, where you're at, and what lens you look through? Here's one. Do you remember the last argument you had with someone over one of these issues? Think back. What's the last time you had an argument with someone over some of these issues? Who was it with? How did it go? Are you still friends? Do you still disagree? Thinking about that moment, would you do anything differently in that moment? What's the hardest part for you when you're talking with someone you disagree with about important issues? Like, what's the hardest part of those conversations? What's most difficult in those conversations? And the last one I have is, who is your favorite supervillain? Like, when you think about supervillains, well, who is your favorite story from childhood or now? Like, you look at, maybe you've seen a movie. Who's your favorite supervillain? All right, I know I saw a lot of you writing with your hands crossed, so I know you'll remember these answers, right? Here we go. No matter what the topic is, that was kind of funny, and none of you laughed. Sorry if I offended you, but you were writing it in your mind. No matter what the topic is, the issue, whatever it is, there's always a side A and a side B. All right, there's two sides to it. Now, there's a lot in between, but there's a side A at one and there's a side B. All right, and you might find yourself all the way to one side or somewhere in the middle. So whether we're talking about issues in the church or issues in politics or where the two of them connect, there's always two sides to that issue, side A and side B. It's a spectrum, but there's a line dividing the sides. And we are people who are divided. We are divided over race and religion and science, politics, gender equality, and so on. And not only do we disagree on many of these things with people we encounter or that we're in relationship with, we often are bothered or even angered that people can believe what they believe about things. Like, how could anyone believe that, right? And our attempts to talk about it or debate or just have conversation are failing. Like, there's no room to disagree, let alone to disagree well. And often it becomes an us versus them mentality. We all have our beliefs on certain issues that matter to us, and we often like to draw lines in the sand or try to label and other the people who disagree with us. So a question that we all must face is can we move people from side A to side B on an issue? Can we move, or side B to side A? Like, can we do it? Is it possible? Is it important? Should it be a goal? We can find, like I said, when we have conversations about issues and topics we disagree on, this might sound weird coming from a pastor, but I want to set this parameter for you, this first thing, and again, it might sound weird, but when we have issues about, or we have disagreements about important issues, I encourage you, do not start with the Bible, all right? We can find wisdom from Scripture about many of the issues that we argue about. But when you start a conversation with, well, what does the Bible say? Too often, one side is accused of watering down the Bible or just throwing it away completely, which isn't true. And the other side is accused of being too literal with the Bible, or just you hate others, don't you? Which isn't helpful for the conversation. So I don't think debating the Bible or how you interpret the Bible is the best way to start a conversation. It's central to the discussion, but it's not the starting point. But let me say this, in case they're listening, I believe the Bible is fully inspired, and it's useful in teaching and correction, and we can look to it for wisdom and guidance. But very rarely will you change someone's mind by arguing your interpretation of a particular scripture. That's not how it works in the beginning. So, what happens when we have these hard conversations with friends? Typically, there are three common responses or results that most hard conversations where people disagree strongly. Our first is we fight, right? How does this describe your last argument you had, right? This is usually our first response when the issue is important to us. We argue, we debate, we get angry, we get loud, we type with capital letters, right? We want to say our point. We want to argue our case. We're often emotionally attached to the issue, and it just gets messy. And we say things we regret, and we often lose friends this way. Or we see fractures in our relationships with friends and family. So we fight. Another common response is to avoid. How many of you this is you, right? We care about the person so much, or we value the relationship more, so we choose not to talk about it anymore with them, right? We don't bring it up. We leave the room when it comes up, or we scroll past a post on Facebook that you disagree with, right? Sometimes we just plain out avoid the person, right? Maybe you really weren't that good of friends in the beginning, so this is okay, right? We don't talk anymore. We don't go to family get-togethers because Uncle Joe is there, and you know what Uncle Joe says, so we avoid those things. And you find yourself hanging out with people who just agree with you instead. We fight, we avoid. Or the third thing, most common, is that we compromise. How many of you have ever said, let's just agree to disagree, right? But what if? What if the issue is too important to agree to disagree? Like, what if someone's life is at risk? What if someone's value of their life is being argued or it's on the ballot in November? Can both sides be right? Like, what if someone is wrong? What if you are in a relationship with that person and fighting is not working, avoiding it is not an option, but there is no compromise here. You have to have hard conversations, and we just can't go on ignoring things when there are lives at risk. And so how do we have hard conversations that challenge each other to critically think or rethink beliefs when everyone thinks they're right? Or the truth is that we do want to change people's minds, right? We do believe that they may be wrong about right matters, right? Where right is important. And so it's okay to take a side on an issue. Not everyone can be right, except my wife. But not all views are valid. Hear when I say this. Not all views are valid. This is what I mean. If someone has an opinion or a view that the value of a person depends on the color of their skin, that's not a valid argument. That's not two sides of the same coin, all right? If someone is saying in the midst of 1 million people dying that the coronavirus is a hoax, that's not something we just agree to disagree about. There's lives at stake. So if we're debating over which ice cream flavor is the best, right? Or if fruit belongs on pizza, which it doesn't, it's okay to disagree. We can agree to disagree on those things, right? But when literally lives can be at stake on some issues, we have to have hard conversations. And so I'd like to suggest that there's an alternative ending or a fourth way. It's not fight, it's not avoid, it's not compromise, but it's called strategic dialogue. And I want to identify some roadblocks or some obstacles that you will face that will show up in these conversations with people you disagree with. And these are important, and you should really be aware of these and be able to identify them so that you can have productive dialogue, this strategic dialogue which Justin Lee talks about in this book. First, it's called ego protection. Ego protection. When you disagree with someone and you believe that you are right and they are wrong, and the issue seems so ethically and morally clear that they must be evil, right? You know, you begin to wonder, can people be born evil? Like, why would someone think that or believe that? Are they evil? Like, and nobody wants to be wrong or look like a fool. And when you're fighting one side on the issue, you probably think that that person on the other side, they're wrong. I'm right, they're wrong. And even if we make a good point, or they make a good point, and you can't counter that point, you know, what do? Well, we get angry, right? And we make it personal. And we completely go off topic and we begin to attack each other. And how do we view some of those people who are wrong? Well, we say things, well, they're dumb, they're ignorant. And often we view them as a villain. In the moment that a person you are debating senses that you think that they're the bad guy, they will shut down. Have you ever been in a conversation or witnessed one where one person called the other person Hitler? Like, you're acting like Hitler. What you believe is like what Hitler would believe. Did you know that when someone does that, there's a rule, a law that says that the debate is over? It's called Godwin's Law or Godwin's Rule. It's an actual thing that in conversation, in debates, if someone invokes Hitler as an example or that accuses one of being like that the conversation's over, the debate's over, and that person has lost. Like, you don't go there. It's a real thing. And this is where the us versus them idea plays out in our church and in our culture. But what if? What if instead of viewing those we disagree with as villains or the bad guys that must have been born evil, what if we tried to understand their story? Like, how did they get to where they believe what they believe? What if we spent some time researching their backstory? So let's go back to the question, who is your favorite supervillain? Like, who did you come up with? Give me an example. Someone shout it out. What? Cruella de Vil? All right. Ursula? Anyone else? So I was thinking about this, and I can think of, if you could think of any movie villains that once you heard the story, like their backstory, and you understood where they were coming from, did it change the way you felt about them? Has anyone seen the movie Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, where it tells the backstory of how he became the Joker? Or Thanos. Like, I got people who will defend Thanos and what he was doing. He was a murderer. That's what he was doing. He was killing half the population. But people will go, hey, I understand. He was trying to do the right thing, you know. How about the Grinch who stole Christmas, right? Think about that. You know, we remember the cartoon, and we remember he had some life change, and his heart grew 3 times the size that day, and he ended up with the strength of 10 Grinches plus 2, right? But we don't understand the Grinch in that story, in that cartoon. It doesn't go deep enough. But how many of you have seen the Jim Carrey version of that story? And you get to see him as a child and what he goes through as a child and what was done to him. And then you begin to understand, wow, I understand why he lives on Mount Trumpet by himself. Those people in Whoville were jerks. They were bullies. They were mean, right? They deserved to have Christmas taken from them. And so I feel like, I feel like if we understood the stories of the people that we're talking to, if we understood what got them to where they are, we may see them less of enemies and less of supervillains. If we humanize the person and let them tell their story, if we can understand why they believe, not just what they believe, like why it matters to them, like what has their experience been with the issue, what events in their past have led them to what they believe, it's harder to hate someone when you know their story. Second, team loyalty. This is big. For some reason, when we all see issues, when we see them as the opposing team, right? Like they believe that, and we believe this, right? And when we align ourselves with a team, we tend to think as a group. We believe as a group. And right or wrong, if our group takes a certain position on an issue, we all do. Case in point, Yale University. They took a group of people, half that considered themselves Democrat, half of them that considered themselves Republican. And by the way they talked, they got the idea that the Republicans leaned to the stringent side of policies and that the Democrats were leaning to the generous side of policies. And what they did is they took some fake articles, and they had some fake articles written by Republican lawmakers that were very, very generous, that were like against everything that these Republicans had already admitted to what they believe. And then they took some Democratic lawmakers and they had them write very stringent policies that were counter to all the things the Democrats had talked about. Did I lose that? And so they had them read it, and then they had them argue it. And these people were arguing these policies and laws that went against everything they believed because either the Republican wrote it or the Democrat wrote it, right? They went with that side. And growing up in church, for me, this is my experience. Growing up in church, it was Republican only, right? All Christians were Republicans, and all Republicans believed this. In fact, I was told that Democrats were evil and they did not love God. I remember being in 3rd grade, Beverly Elementary School, Detroit Avenue, Toledo, Ohio. Mrs. Johnson was my teacher. Man, I made her so mad. We had this principal. His name was Mr. Woody. The dude was like 9 feet tall, 600 pounds. As a 3rd grader, that's what he looked like. He was this giant, massive black man that was probably 6'5", 300, but he was huge. And he had this wooden paddle that was long, like that long. It was forever long. And he used it on me a few times. And that paddle had holes in it because you didn't want the wind to slow it down when he was bringing it in on you, right? And and so like everyone feared getting paddled by Mr. Woody. But I made Miss Johnson so mad that she asked if she could be the one to hit me. And she did. But she used the ping pong paddle. She wasn't smart. She used that and didn't hurt at all. But I remember that. I was like, oh, okay, you can do that every time. But anyways, I had a lot of paddle experiences. Anyways, I remember 3rd grade, 1984, during the presidential election. I literally remember this. I would go around telling people that they should vote for Reagan. I'm 3rd grade, right? Vote for Reagan because Walter Mondale, he was evil. He wasn't a Christian because he was a Democrat, right? That's what I was taught. That's what I believed. And maybe that's what it was. She was a Democrat, I bet. I bet that's probably when I got spanked. But I believed that in 3rd grade. And when we're divided onto one side or the other, we believe the worst about the other team, right? Even their motivation or their intentions are bad. We often judge people by their worst actions and judge ourselves by our best intentions, right? You ever get cut off when you're driving? You want to salute the person that cut you off. You know, you're so mad, angry. What are they doing? They're a horrible person. They don't care about life. They're a Democrat, whatever side you'd call it, you know. But when you do it, I'm busy. I'm in a rush. I got places to go. I'm so sorry, right? We judge the other. They're a horrible person. But when we do it, we got good intentions, right? To prevent this from happening to you, or to you becoming, whatever, you need to make friends outside of your team, outside of your group circle. Like you need to read or listen to news sources that are more centered than they are right or left, right? If not, you will become a victim of what is known as an echo chamber. I don't know if any of you have ever heard that before, echo chambers. Church youth group, and even my first college experience, I lived in a bubble, right? Not really a bubble, but it was like a bubble. And everything looked the same. We all thought the same. We all believed the same. Your social media feed, your cable news, your friends that you choose to talk to, the churches that you go to, those can easily become echo chambers. And when you live inside an echo chamber, people who don't share your view, they begin to make less and less sense to you. Like, why in the world would someone believe that? When all the people I talk to believe this, Make friends outside your bubble. Become informed about what other sides believe, what news, and read the news, read news articles and books. Listen to people who speak about issues from both sides. Third thing is misinformation. Unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation out there that is spread, intentionally or unintentionally. There are these websites that you can go to that will help you see major news sources, how they tell slants to the same stories. But oftentimes, these stories are completely different. Like they're telling completely different stories than the other side is telling. And it's hard to have conversations when we can't even agree about the basic facts of a story. But people will believe it anyways. Often facts do not matter, especially if your whole team believes something. They call it the backfiring effect, right? This is when your deepest convictions are challenged by contradictory evidence. Your beliefs end up getting stronger, like you double down. Like you believe this and science proves it differently, or something shows you differently, and instead of going, loosening your grip and going, maybe I was wrong, you double down on it. You dig your heels in. It's the backfire effect. And often our conversations come down to, what are the facts on the issue? And that truth can be relative, but the facts should be clear. So what you can do to figure out what the misinformation is, if someone you're talking to, you have this fear that they might be misinformed, is ask questions, right? And you may discover that they might have the wrong info. Learn how you can educate them without being condescending, right? Because you may have been informed years ago. You may have read something or been or heard something where they haven't yet. Be patient with them. Bring up the misinformation first. Like start off with it. Hey, I heard this weird story the other day but I read this. A tool that I found helpful when trying to find what's going on in the country is this news bias chart. Cannon, do you have that news bias chart? I have some copies of it down here, and this would really help you. I think look at maybe as soon as he finds it. Yes, you do. I know it's in there. Find it. It's the misinformation, the bias chart. It's in the bank. It's a really important thing. I want you to see it. I can show you the picture here, but it won't be. Anyways, this is what this is for, and as he's finding it. What this is for is it takes an unbiased view of all the news sources, from cable, like the big news stations and stuff like that, all the way down to websites and stuff like that. And it shows where they are when it comes to right, left, top to bottom, when it comes to like real facts, to like opinions, to like fake stuff kind of deal. And it would be really challenging no, it's not that one, it's the other one that you had, but it's all right. I have some copies of it here. I'm going to step out here. That's me. So it looks like this. I know it's hard here, but it kind of shows the slope of news sources. And it would be really helpful for you to first look at the news source that you watch and go, man, whoa, this is what, like, the unbiased view of what I'm reading. Maybe I'm a little too slanted one way or the other, or too, like, close to the opinions than I am the facts. And you might go, I might want to start watching some of these news sources here in the middle. Those are for you. Take one home. You might recognize that you're listening or reading something that's unhealthy. It's an unhealthy echo chamber. The fourth is comfort. People like to stay where they are. They're happy with how things are going for them, and they just want to be left alone. People don't like to make waves. They don't like to rock the boat. If you remember, I showed a clip a couple of weeks ago from a movie called Hell and Mr. Fudge. And it was an idea of this pastor who was taking on the challenge of debating the two sides, so what hell might be in the future. And this other pastor that he sits down with, who had a lot more experience, sat down and said, listen, folks are partial to the truth that they already got. It's like that little 8-watt battery, he says, that's in the back of your refrigerator. And every time you open the fridge, the light's there. Whenever you need it, it's there. But when you shut the fridge, you don't even think about it. You don't even need it. It's not there. And all of a sudden, you show up with this giant 200-watt light bulb to illuminate things. People are going to say, no, thank you. I got what I need. I have it already. Change is scary for some, and it's not worth the risk. People might not even see a need for a change, right? They're unaware that there is even an issue. So you have to give them a reason to talk. You have to create some tension in the room. You have to make them uncomfortable. We have a group that Jody mentioned earlier that meets on Thursdays called Pub Theology. This is a chance for people with different views to get together and talk about current issues. The fifth thing, the last roadblock, is worldview protection. So our philosophy of life, like what's formed our beliefs, how we see the world, what lens we see through. We hold our beliefs at the core of who we are. What we believe about God, what we believe about politics, what we believe about how to raise our kids, what's taught in our schools. And those beliefs have deep roots, generations and traditions. They hold us together. And if you argue biblical interpretation, if that's how you start, if that's what you argue, you will lose that argument. Because at that point, when you start to open eyes or lenses to like a different way to read Scripture, more than one belief or issue is now being attacked. Because if this is wrong, if I was wrong about this, what else might I be wrong about? And then I begin to question everything I believe. And that's too much for some people. And so they're going to go down with the boat, right? It doesn't matter if they could stop the leak or keep it from sinking or not. They're going down with it. They don't want to open themselves to that. And so what do we do with these roadblocks? Well, the one thing I can say is that you need to be aware of them. People will resist change. And when you start messing with their core beliefs or their worldview, it's very personal and very scary for some. Some people think that when all things fall apart, if anything changes, right? Like a house of cards. Rob Bell taught me this years ago when I read one of his books, that if we treat our beliefs, our faith, or our doctrine like a brick wall, right? And we grow and we progress and we begin to change some of our beliefs and we begin to deconstruct our faith, we risk the whole wall falling down. Like if we pull a brick out, that wall is falling down. But what if we held our beliefs more like the springs of a trampoline, right? And they're able to move and flex when we grow and when we change and when we deconstruct or we adjust to the tension in the room, our faith doesn't fall apart. Okay, so those are the roadblocks that we may face when having conversations with people you don't agree with. And what do we do about them? Because they exist, but the conversation has to move forward. And I'm going to kind of close with this. Because ultimately the church has to land, and hear this. As a church, the churches have to land on one side or the other on some issues, right? Example would be a church going, as a church, are we going to perform same-sex ceremonies or not? Who can volunteer? Who can lead? Who can we hire? Who can take communion? Those are things that churches draw lines in the sand about when it comes to the LGBTQ community. There are issues and facts and topics where what side that we land on matters. Places where what we believe is the right answer matter. You see, different perspectives is not the goal as much as it is the reality of small town communities. But we have to learn how to treat each other as family, where we don't just fight And then we call each other evil or deceived, and we walk away. But where we can maybe go to our room for a timeout, cool down, and then come back as a family, continue the conversation. Jesus was clear when he said, "They will know you are my disciples by your love for each other." And unfortunately, these days we have more CNN and Fox News disciples than we do have Jesus' disciples. So here's what you need to do when you have these hard conversations. You recognize the roadblocks, and then you listen, right? We can't control others. We can't make people change their minds. But that is the goal sometimes, right? Otherwise, why would we make Thanksgiving awkward, right? Like, why post certain things on social media? Why risk broken relationships? Because you believe that it matters. But still, you must offer grace. And even if you believe they're wrong, you ask questions and you listen. What do you believe? How did you get there? When did you first become aware of the issue? Why do you think that? Why does it matter to you? Why are you concerned? What are you afraid of? What are you hopeful for? And then ask more questions, and then listen some more. And then listen again. And make sure you really listen and repeat what they said. Ask them to repeat for clarity if it's something you didn't understand. And then say it back to them. Hey, this is what I'm hearing you say. Am I gathering right? Is this where you're at? Is this what you're saying? And when you do those kind of things, you're making yourself really listen. Because this is important. Often when we have debates or conversations like this, it's point, counterpoint, right? Like you make a point, and while you're making your point, they're thinking about what they're going to say to come back at you, right? Or you're doing that. They're making their point, and all you're thinking about is how I'm going to come back to that point. I'm not listening. I'm thinking what I want to say next. And if you struggle with this, to not like respond to everything, plan for the conversation that you have to be one-sided. And just listen and ask questions. And don't give your side until they ask for it. And if they ask you what you think, then you talk. When they believe you care, what they think is important to them, they'll want to hear what your story is. And they'll begin to care what you think. You see this a couple times with Jesus in the New Testament. The woman at the well, Mary and Martha at the death of Lazarus, the disciples on the road to Emmaus. He made space to hear their pain and ask questions. Jesus listened to stories and didn't argue with them. And when the other would make comments about when the Pharisees were at Simon's house, and this woman walked in and she dumps perfume on Jesus' feet, and they have all these opinions about her. And this is the type of woman she is. Jesus looked at her and said, "Hey, your name's Mary." Guys, it's Mary, not that woman. You see her? And he looks at her and he says, "Ma'am, I see you, woman. Mary, I see you. I see your story, and you matter to me." And we're going to retell that story next week of why it's so important that we see people and why that matters. So you listen to them. And then you tell your story. The best evidence for anything you want to communicate change is your story. What your experience is with the issue. Why it's important to you. Personal experience is better than arguments about what ifs. You can tell someone all day statistics about the facts about the effects of gun violence, or that suicide is the leading cause of death for LGBTQ adolescents 10 to 25. But when you tell your story, words have the power to become flesh. The words become flesh. We've heard that said somewhere before. And we saw with some of the roadblocks that facts really don't matter to some people, but your story, your journey, your experience matters to your friends. Let's say the conversation is about UFOs or life on other planets. How many of you have seen E.T.? Or just raise your hands, okay. Arrival, Alf, you guys remember that? Mork and Mindy? Think of like these nice, and we found out that tomorrow aliens are coming to Earth, land. We're pretty pumped, right? we might hide our cats from Alf, but otherwise, we're pretty, these are some nice aliens coming down to hang out with us, right? We're excited about this. But what if you hadn't seen any of those movies and you saw Independence Day or Aliens, right? You'd probably feel a little different, right? Probably a little more fear coming in if aliens are showing up tomorrow, right? Because that's your only experience was end of the world, right? We need to let them tell their story. And you need to tell your story and your experience. And it may give them a whole new perspective on things. And the third thing is to be patient. Listen, tell your story, be patient. Give them time to come around. It's not your job to change their mind. Try to keep it a personal connection with them the best that you can. And unfortunately, you will and you can lose friends. And relationships are sometimes broken over issues that are important. But be patient. Commit to come back and talk some more about it. And then the last thing is you need to recharge, right? This is where like-minded people can bring you energy. Like listening to podcasts or reading books, alone time, connecting with God. There are some people with whom, this is the last thing I want to say, there are some people with whom you do not need to engage in hard conversations with, right? There are some mean-spirited people who just want to fight and argue and be mean. You are not responsible for that or for them. You do not need to fix that. It's okay to not let that negativity into your space. Chances are they're not your friend or they don't value your friendship. But when it's possible, we need to love others and disagree well. We need to listen to their story. We need to tell our story. We need to be patient and find some time to recharge. I want to read that poem again by Emily Dickinson. This idea of telling our story. Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success and circuit lies. Too bright for our informed delight, the truth's superb surprise. As lightning to the children eased with explanation kind, the truth must dazzle gradually, or every man be blind. There's a way to communicate the truth. There's a way to tell it. Not with misinformation or misdirection, but indirection. Through connection, through your story, where every man be blind. I want to invite you to stand. I'm going to close with this prayer, and you guys are free to go. I'm excited for the next 2 weeks. I'm hoping that you're inviting your friends or family. I don't know if it'll be online yet. It'll be able to be streamed in the future. It's a full-length documentary. It's well done. And I don't want you guys to miss this. So Saturday the 1st at 7 o'clock. This is a prayer. It's called A Place for Us. You've heard us say this before, but I want us to close with this. We long to find a place to relax, oh God, to lean into the welcome and the love of real friends who stay true no matter who we are or what we've done. We want to be known, not just our names, but ourselves, our dreams and longings and fears and failings, and be warmly, unrestrainedly welcomed. We yearn to know the joy of opening our hearts to others and seeing them melt and grow soft in the safety of our acceptance. And you have created a place like this for us. A place of people with failings and disagreements who still look out for one another. A place of difference and struggle, but where we all can belong. A place of faith and deep doubt. A place of awkward stumbling like towards Christ-likeness. A place of worship, of mystery, and of rest. And though we can't always see it, although sometimes it doesn't feel like it, this is the place here. Not the buildings and the furniture. No, it's these people who gather each week in your name and try so hard to remember each other's. And for this place and for you being with us, we give our heartfelt gratitude and devotion. Amen. Thank you guys for being here. We love you and hope to see you next week.
When I look into the face I see my brother. I see my brother. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. I see my brother. Is the garment of our courage, the power to make the peace we long to